My name is David Davis, and today we're talking about the top 10 free vSphere management tools out there. I'm honored to have a special guest, Kendrick Coleman. And first, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a vExpert, VCP4, CCIE. Some of you might know me from my Train Signal video training courses on vSphere. I've written a number of articles for virtualizationadmin.com and a number of other websites. And I got most of my real-world experience working for a company, a small or medium-sized, let's say, privately held company. And it was a family-owned company. They didn't have a lot of money for expensive management tools, and that was where I first got the idea and started using free vSphere tools.
My name is Kendrick Coleman. Like David, I'm also a vExpert, VCP3, VCP4. Also have my CCNA. I actually came from a networking background. Really got just thrown into virtualization. Previous job before this one, I came in as a Cisco engineer, and they said, well, guess what? You're also your VMware admin now, too. So I said, okay, cool, I'll do that, too. Did the fast track, and since then, haven't looked back. And that's sort of where I've just been gaining and focusing my efforts in my career. I'm also a blogger at KendrickColeman.com. A lot of things we're going to talk about today you can find on my website, but we'll get to that. I won't give away everything already. So.
Just to give you a little history about this topic, back in 2008, I was writing for searchvmware.com, and I was sitting in bed late one night with my laptop trying to think of something to write about. I'd recently used some free tools, and I thought, well, why not a post about the top 10 free vSphere tools? So at that time, I used a very liberal definition, basically anything I could think of that might be helpful to a VMware administrator. The VMO was new from VMware, later renamed VMA. At that time, Storage vMotion was command line, so there was a Storage vMotion plug-in. So from there, I didn't think too much about that post, but later that year they said, wow, this is like one of the top posts we had on the website the whole year. I said, wow. So in 2009, they said, why don't you update that list? So I updated the list, and again, I used a very liberal definition. I even included things like the VMware VMTN community, just as a list of a common tool that a VMware administrator would use. And then more recently, Kendrick created a post.
Yeah. This was something, like I said, David had this idea before I did. I basically wanted to really start giving back more to my local user group. So I approached our leader and I just said, is there some sort of a small presentation I can give, something that's not so vendor focused and network heavy that, I can just give it so everyday admins can take it back to their office and actually use it. And I said, I just want to keep it something simple, like top 10 free tools. And he gave me that opportunity. I was able to speak. But what I did before all this, I went home, started doing my research, and I put a blog post out there of about 30 free tools I could find. I didn't want any 30-day free trial stuff. I just wanted only free things that you can use within your infrastructure every day. Since then, right now there's over 50 free vSphere tools I have on that post. But when I started testing all these out, I built it a nested ESX environment. I had ESX server, ESXi, vCenter, a few VMs to take care of AD, DNS. Then I got started time to actually start testing these tools. And I did it on a ranking of 1 to 25 points. I did it on really the first 5 points. They're really the only scientific measurement you could say. If you got 1 point if it could run against standalone ESX, 2 points if it could run against standalone ESXi, because that's going to be the next generation of our hypervisor, and 2 points if it could run against vCenter, going to bring in your whole VI. Then from there, the other 4 points were basically on my own opinion. So 1 to 5 points based on ease of installation. Is it easy click next type to install, or is it something that I have to transport over, use vConverter to get it in there? Does it have to have its own VM because it's a web-based application that has its own SQL database? Other was the features. Is it a standout feature that nothing else like it exists? And does it have more than one feature? Or is it just a standalone sort of application? Third was how well does it perform that feature? Also the interface, does it have a nice interface, easy to navigate? And last was, is this an everyday tool? Is this something I can use in my data center every single day? Or is this something I just use once and then I have to uninstall it after that? Because in my opinion, if I can use it every single day, then it's a lot more beneficial to me as an administrator. Like a lot of you in this room, I'm just a regular VMware admin. So that's sort of where I started coming with this post.
So Kendrick took a more analytical approach and assigned these scores. And in this presentation, you'll see when we list out the tools, you'll see a little ranking with Kendrick's score next to each tool. Just to tell you ahead of time, the tools that I provide in this list, they're not in any particular ranking. It's just 10 tools in no particular order. So first question might be, well, why do you need free tools to begin with? And I compared this to Batman. I thought on his tool belt, he doesn't have just one tool. He's got all sorts of tools. And I think of VMware admins, as sort of being the same thing. You're not just going to have one tool. I mean, you might spend, 70% of your time in the vSphere client, but you're still going to have a lot of other free tools. And every VMware admin is going to be different because every person has their own day-to-day issues that they have to struggle with, and every virtual infrastructure is also different. So, where do these free tools come from? A lot of different sources. The first one is VMware. Of course, VMware puts out their own free tools to enhance vSphere's usefulness. There's independent developers out there. We'll talk in the presentation here about Nick Weaver. He goes by Lynxbat on Twitter. He works for EMC. He's a vExpert and a vSpecialist, and he presented here at VMworld on vSphere best practices for networking. Really smart guy, and he came out with his own free tools. There's large VMware partners like Veeam, Vision Core, and even vKernel, and we'll talk about their free tools in here. And they're trying to get leads, of course, honestly, for their more commercial tools, but their free tools that they put out do have usefulness and value. And then there's small startup software companies. Could be just a one-man shop, and he's a developer and he creates a free tool, and maybe he has a commercial edition that's $99, let's say, with a couple more free features. And one day maybe he hopes to get hired on by a large software company. So. To get started, the number one on the list here comes from VMware Labs. If you're not familiar with labs.vmware.com, I think it's a really innovative way, or a really innovative thing that VMware is doing. They've created this website that's full of free tools. And what they are there's pet projects out there that they call flings. So they're temporary things that these developers work on, something that they'd like to put in, let's say, the vSphere client one day, and they don't want to have to support right now, and so they put it out there as a fling. They get feedback. There is a way on there you can post questions. You can make suggestions to try to improve these flings. And the fling that I found most useful is the VMware Guest Console, also called VGC. So it's for virtual machine administration, and it really goes down deep into each virtual machine. It gives you a task manager for each virtual machine, so you can see the processes running on each virtual machine, a file explorer, you can see the files on those virtual machines, and you can deploy scripts en masse to each of those virtual machines. So it's really powerful, and I think one day that will be incorporated into the vSphere client, or personally I'd like to see it in there. This is what it looks like here. You can see there's a file explorer, and there's a lot you can do with it. One of the things it reminds me of is I used to use Citrix Presentation Manager, and it had a integrated task list for every process on every server in the Citrix farm. And I used to use that. You could go in, you could see all the processes, you could filter them, you could search through them, you could kill the processes. So if someone installed some little application, like used to it was WeatherBug, some little weather tool that people would run on the Citrix farm, I'd go in there, I'd see who was running it, and I'd kill that application. And this has the same thing for virtual machines. You can see all the processes running on all the virtual machines and sort and filter those.
Yeah, it's a great tool to actually use if you have a virus, say, running haywire within your infrastructure. It's going to spit out a list of all the processes running within all your virtual machines just in one single window, and you can just go ahead and start killing processes from there. So it's an easy way to do it. I was able to use this in my own data center. Everybody upgraded to 4.1 already, right? No? Okay. Well, I did. I took my production to 4.1, and with every single update, when you update a host, you actually have to update all your VMware tools on all your underlying guests. I got through about 2 of my guests, and then I started getting this really weird generic error message from vCenter just saying it could initiate the installer. I don't really remember what it was, but I just did a quick Google search of that in 4.1, and I found my answer. Basically what it says is you actually have to go within every single one of your virtual machines, Linux and Windows, and delete the old repository so you can actually install your new version of VMware tools. I thought to myself, if I'm a PowerShell expert, I could script this and run it against all my Windows hosts, but, I have my Linux VMs that are, getting left behind. VGC came to mind. I had used it once before. So what I did is I created this small batch file, and what you can do with it is I deployed this file to every single one of my Windows hosts. It got on there, ran the file for me, deleted the old repository, then the batch file would delete itself after it was done. I was able to push this out to over 200 VMs within a matter of about 30 seconds, and it was done. So I could actually continue updating all my tools without having to go through and start touching every single one of them. That's what I said. It's a great tool to just do quick administration. This is probably one of the things that you can probably eventually see being added to vCenter later on.
And there's a post on your website.
Oh yeah. Gotta plug my website, right? So there is a detailed how-to of what I did, and you can download the batch file I used if you ever run into this problem when you're upgrading to 4.1. So keep that in mind and go check it out.
Yeah, there's a lot of other free tools on the VMware Labs website. Just some of them that came to mind, ESX Plot, which is a graphical view of ESX Top. There's a vCenter Mobile Access to administer vCenter from a mobile phone. A new one they just came out with is called Auto Deploy. And I know Kendrick, he's used Auto Deploy.
Again, got to plug my website. Got a detailed how-to on how to use Auto Deploy as well. Auto Deploy, as everybody knows, ESX is going away. ESXi is here now. Start moving your configurations. Well, actually, you can't move configurations. It's basically a clean wipe install. So how do we rapidly deploy ESXi hosts? Well, with 4.1, we now have a kickstart feature. What Auto Deploy does is it also uses Kickstart with host profiles. So you do have to have Enterprise Plus licensing to use this. Basically what you do is you quickly provision a ESXi server. Using host profiles, it will take that server, bring it into vCenter for you, and start configuring it with all the values that you set within host profiles. So this, we're continually making steps further to quickly and rapidly make the change from ESX to ESXi. If you really want to dive deeper into Kickstart installs, I also have a sample kick script install on my website you can use and hack away and take away pieces from there in your own environment.
And actually, while I was here, I met the person who's in charge of the VMware Labs website, and on Twitter he goes by VMware Labs is his name. He was telling me that these engineers from VMware, they work really hard on these pet projects. They work long hours on the features. They're trying to improve on VMware, but they also have these little side projects, and that they really love to get feedback and new ideas about free tools on the website. And he said they really do read and respond to whatever we post on the Labs website. So,
and there's a cool one that we didn't put on there called Onyx, but we'll talk about it here in a bit.
Yeah, I got an email update on the way here that there's a new version of Onyx we'll talk about in the Power CLI slide.
Don't give it away.
So number 2 is Veeam Fast SCP. Most everyone's familiar with Veeam. I have a big booth in the Solutions Exchange. Fast SCP is a file transfer tool. And I think it's one of the tools that if you're a new VMware admin, the first thing you want to do is create a virtual machine. And to create a virtual machine, you need an operating system, and so you need you want some way to get that ISO file to load your operating system on the virtual machine. And to do that, you need a file transfer tool. You can't use FTP. You need SCP, Secure Copy Protocol, and Veeam Fast SCP is really one of the best and fastest ones out there. Veeam told me that it was the first tool or piece of software they ever offered as a company, and they've had over 100,000 downloads, and the guy who wrote Fast SCP still works at Veeam in R&D, and some of the file transfer methods, actually the SCP copy that they use in there is still used in Veeam Backup today to back up virtual machines. So you can schedule transfers with it. So it could be like a poor man's backup utility, and it really has like a little Windows Explorer, look and feel. It's real easy to drag and drop stuff. So to me, it's just one of the must-have tools, as a VMware admin. And Veeam has a number of other free tools. Of course, they have the commercial Monitor, but they also have a free version of Monitor, which is really powerful. And it's a real-time, performance monitoring tool, and it keeps 24 hours of history. So if you want more than 24 hours of history, you have to buy the commercial edition. But even at 24 hours of history, there's a lot of troubleshooting and monitoring you can do with the free version of Monitor. I've got a video on my website about how to use the free version of Monitor, to solve problems in your virtual infrastructure. And I know Kendrick's used it.
A perfect use case for this is think about if you have a pretty decent sized infrastructure and you can spring for a 37-inch monitor. Put it right there, and you can watch real-time stats go by. It's really a basic kind of thing. All it does is just pull all those stats from vCenter, right, just through the API. But it does just a few more things. The one things I really like about it is it has the dashboard of, say, the top 5 or top 10. You can have CPU hogs, RAM hogs. If there's any kind of disk swapping going on within your infrastructure, everybody knows disk swapping's bad, right? And also disk latency. So you can see where you might have some performance issues, but you can just watch it go by in real time. So if you do see spikes happening, you can go and address it at that point. So
Veeam's got a number of other free tools. They've got Business View, which is used to categorize, objects in your virtual infrastructure, how your business is structured. So you can create, divisions, and you can group ESX hosts and virtual machines in those divisions, and then you can use that categorization system in Monitor. They also have a new version of Reporter, a free edition of Reporter, which is really good for documentation. So it goes out there, it runs documents or reports, and you can use these documents. I think the perfect use case would be like, for disaster recovery, to document all the virtual machines you have, all their configurations, all the ESX servers. So a lot of good free tools from Veeam. Number 3 on the list comes from a company called Trilead, and they're a small, software development company. And this tool is for VMware administration, similar to VMware Guest Console. And it similar to Fast SCP, it uses SCP to transfer, virtual machines and ISOs from, say, your desktop PC to an ESX server. But it also has an integrated SSH client. So there's like a tab on there that you can use to get access to your ESX servers at the command line. So this is what it looks like. It's called VM Explorer, or they call it VMX, for short. But I think it's another example of could be like a poor man's, free backup utility.
I agree. It is the poor man's backup utility. But the cool thing is this program does have some limitations. You can't add a vCenter server to it. It won't populate your ESX guests. But you can add up to 3 ESX servers, ESXi servers as well. So that's sort of the limitation where you have. The cool thing is as David said, it's a free backup utility. What VMware doesn't know yet until they probably see this presentation is that it works with free ESXi. And that is a violation of VMware's EULA, so I guess go get it now while you can. But it's a really easy way to simply back up your VMs, and it does it in a crash-consistent way where it will take a snapshot and then it'll offload that snapshot and take it to any sort of backup destination, whether it's a CIFS server, whether it's the local VM, if you want to have it on a VM. So there's a bunch of different ways to be able to do it. But it's like I said, it's a poor man's backup utility, and but it does work, and it doesn't use any kind of vStorage APIs to make transfers faster. It's sort of an old legacy type of, I guess you could say, backup, but it is free, and you can't really compete with that.
So Trilead, they have a professional edition, which just has some additional features, but still it's not a very expensive application. Number 4 on the list comes from Extrovert. These are some guys in the UK. They run a website called extrovert.com. They have a lot of good, really high quality like white papers and how-to guides. I've used some of them myself. And they have a number of free tools as well. And one that I picked out, it's a super simple tool. So, when you install it and you're like, that's it. Don't be disappointed. But what it does is it saves you a little bit of time when it comes to connecting to a virtual machine using RDP. So instead of going down to the RDP client and opening an RDP client and typing in the name of the virtual machine you want to connect to, you just right-click on the virtual machine inside the vSphere client, and you get this option that says Connect to RDP, and it launches the RDP client already on your computer to connect to that virtual machine. So, maybe it saves you a little bit of time, but maybe that time adds up over time. So it's only 1.9 megabytes. It's really tiny, and it's a super quick installation. They have a number of other free tools on extrovert.com. They have one called vAlarm, which is an alerting tool. So it's a little taskbar, applications, just sits down in your task tray, and when there's an alarm in vCenter, it alerts you, a little pop-up message comes up, and then you can click on that and you can get the details you see on the left-hand side there.
Yeah, I think this tool probably could have been higher within my set, but the fact is it only works with vCenter. So you can't have it with the standalone ESX box. What I like about it from an administration point of view, when you log into vCenter and you see all these alarms, I think there's, over 150 of them. And if you actually want to be alarmed about it, you got to run through every single one, set an email or an SNMP trap, whatever it is to be alarmed about it. Great thing about this, you just install it on your desktop, and it'll pull vCenter, I think, every 1 minute, 5 minutes, everything like that. So if an alarm does come up, it shows up right there on your desktop, and you actually view the details right there on your desktop to see if it's something you need to take care of right away or if it can wait till after lunch. So Extrovert, they've got a number of other free tools like the VMware Document Downloader, which does exactly what it sounds like. It sucks down all the VMware documentation to your local computer, so you can read it offline, in PDF format. They've got one called vLogView, which is for analyzing logs or viewing logs and filtering logs on ESX servers. And then they've got a Visio Virtualization Icon Action Pack, which is a bunch of icons you would add to Visio to create diagrams that are more virtualization specific. So they're at extrovert.com/downloads.
Number 5 on the list is all about Power CLI, and if you're not familiar with Power CLI, as we said earlier, it's time to start learning about it. I admit I'm not a Power CLI expert, but I do know who to go and talk to and learn about Power CLI. One person is Hal Rottenberg. He wrote a book on Power CLI, and he also did the Train Signal vSphere Pro video training, 2 different courses, about 10 hours of Power CLI training, one on introducing Power CLI and another one on performance and troubleshooting. But back to the slide, Power CLI is, a PowerShell administration for vSphere. And you can download and install VMware's Power CLI for free, but all you're going to get is a command line. And at first that's kind of intimidating. So what they have is there's a website called powergui.org, and you can download this free graphical user interface for Power CLI. And then there's a guy named Alan Renouf, I think I said it right, and he's actually here doing a session with a guy named Luke on Power CLI, using Power CLI. And Alan created this VMware Community Power Pack, and it adds in to the Power GUI, and it gives you hundreds and hundreds of scripts. This is what it looks like here. You see on the left-hand side, there was the scripts that Power GUI came with, and then the Power Pack is down there on the bottom.
Yeah, this was actually an easy number 1 for me. I actually used vEcoShell. It's from Vision Core / Quest, whatever they are now. But that's who it comes from right now. Basically, just like Power GUI and vEcoShell, you download it, you install it. Actually, you should say maybe some of the prerequisites for using Power CLI. You have to have PowerShell. So if you're running XP, you need to install PowerShell. Yet if you're running 7, you already have it installed. So on top of that, then you install Power CLI. Then you install vEcoShell or Power GUI. Now we have this interface, right? So you actually have a nice graphical user interface, and it comes packed with 150 scripts out of the box. So you sit there and you already have this to either check anything in for your infrastructure, reporting. There's so many capabilities this has. You add Alan's Power Pack, that's another 150 scripts on top of that. There's a guy in here named Duncan Epping. If you ever go to his website called Yellowbricks, he has this thing called an HA Deep Dive. So there's a whole thing about whatever your ESX hosts that are configured for HA. There's actually only 3 of them that are the controllers for HA. There's a script in there that actually tells you which of those ESX hosts are the controllers for HA. So if they do go down, your HA doesn't go debunk. But I can't stress enough, like he said, to start learning Power CLI. As the push starts going more, we're putting more and more VMs into our infrastructure, and Power CLI is going to really be the move forward. We can't do basic administration tasks, or should I say bulk administration tasks, within the vSphere client anymore. If, say, we have 1,000 VMs in our infrastructure, if I need to snapshot 100 of them, what happens? You got to go in the vSphere client. You got to sit here and right-click. Using Power CLI, you can script this in 2 lines. It's going to be really simple. It's really going to be the new way moving forward for a lot of administrators. I feel bad up here just being like I'm giving away industry secrets or something, But I mean, it really is, and I can't stress it enough to start learning it, because it's going to be the new wave at being able to administer, especially with the whole cloud and having all these VMs to take care of. It's going to be here to make your life easier, as Hal said. Power CLI, it's for people who are lazy, and good administrators are actually lazy. So.
And this gentleman down here, he got a Power CLI poster at the VMware booth. It's a really cool poster. If you want to,
yeah, let's demo that thing. I think you get that over at the labs. They're handing that thing out. It's a good. Just shows a lot of things going on. Little intimidating, but yeah, it's something to learn.
You. So if you get a chance, check out Alan Renouf's session. I did hear from someone who attended it. They said it was really good.
Power CLI is for administrators. That's what it's called.
So number 6 on the list comes from vKernel. And vKernel, as you know, a large software company. They have a booth here.
You know what? I forgot to talk about Onyx.
Oh, go ahead.
We totally forgot to talk about Onyx during Power CLI. Sorry to interrupt you. The one from Onyx from Power CLI, Onyx is from VMware Labs, and it uses Power CLI, and it really helps you being able to start learning scripts. Basically what Onyx is, it's a proxy that sits between the vSphere client and the vSphere in your vCenter server. So what you actually do is you install Onyx, and you actually connect that directly to your vCenter client, and then you direct your vSphere client to the Onyx application. And from there, it connects you to vCenter, And every single thing you do within vCenter now is translated into a Power CLI script. So you can actually use that later to do that in administration, take it out, hack away with it, change everything you want. One thing I did forget to mention is with Power GUI and vEcoShell, you also get a script editor in there. So all those scripts that you have, you can actually go through and hack it away and customize it for your environment as well. Excuse me? ONYX.
Yeah, and it's on labs.vmware.com. So back to vKernel. vKernel has a number of free tools. Candidly, some of their free tools are a little bit more commercial oriented, trying to get you to, purchase their commercial tools, or sales oriented, I should say. But they still have value. And one of the ones that I picked out is called Capacity Viewer. And the first time I ran it, I was a little disappointed, because this is all you get right here. It's just one screen, one window that pops up. But what it does is it goes out and it analyzes your vCenter server. And I was actually impressed with some of the statistics that it pulled back, because I was like, well, I really couldn't calculate that myself. For example, it tells you how many virtual machines you could add to your virtual infrastructure, at the current capacity and utilization of the virtual machines that are running right now. It tells you, how much growth you could get out of your current virtual infrastructure. It tells you about performance problems or over-allocated resources. And it gives you a nice quick summary. And I was like, well, that's pretty impressive for a free tool. Could be something that, you just check every morning to see how things are going, like a quick free dashboard. So that's Capacity View. And they have a lot of other free tools: Storage View, App View, VM Stats, Search My VM, Snapshot My VM, Capacity Modeler. And Kendrick used some of these tools.
Yeah, we had to put vKernel in here. Granted, some of their tools aren't as robust as a lot of them. They do really something simple. But the fact is they have a bunch of simple free tools, so you can't really complain too much about there. But I did give number 6 to, I think it was Capacity Modeler, or it was Search My VM. I don't know. Either one, we'll talk about it. Capacity Modeler, there's no other free tool out there like it. You got to think about, as with Capacity View, what else can I put in my infrastructure? The cool thing about this is you bring it in, and it comes in as a VM, and it's all with a web interface. You connect it to vCenter, and it starts pulling in all your stats from just everything that's in your infrastructure currently. And you can think to yourself, am I ready for VDI? Do I have the infrastructure in place to be able to do it? Well, it's going to say, well, you can only add, say, 20 VMs. Well, maybe that's not going to be enough, right? So I can say, well, what if I add 4 more ESX hosts and 40 more terabytes of storage? Now, how many more VMs? It says you can fit 2,000 now. It's a good way to get a quick overview of what you can possibly do with your environment. Search My VM. It gives it a Google-like feel. You actually install this as a virtual appliance as well, and you actually go to the web interface for it, and you can do a search for absolutely everything in your data center. I shouldn't say data center, within your virtual infrastructure. You can say, I want to see the C drive of all my VMs, and it'll spit it out so you can see where is space not being utilized well, am I running out of it, is there a certain VM that is running low on C drive space? So it's an easy way to get a quick dive into your environment. I've also used Storage View and App View. If you go to client sites, this is a great tool to have. Storage View and App View, they're all about App View is all about CPU and RAM contention, just to see maybe perhaps where you have some troubleshooting. It gives it a nice, easy red, green, and yellow stoplight approach to it, where it's just easy to find. In Storage View, it'll grab the top 3 data stores in your environment, and it'll let you know what kind of latency you have. So you can see perhaps there's a problem with the networking, if you're running IP storage, or just where there could possibly be an issue. So it's a quick troubleshooting tool just to see if you do have any mess-ups in your environment that you can quickly analyze and go take care of.
Yeah, and last night I was talking to someone, and he said, in your 10 free tool session, did you mention Search My VM? I said, yeah, it's on there. And he said, well, I think that's one of the best ones, because every time my boss has a question about the virtual infrastructure, what I did is I installed Search My VM, and I tell him just to go to the website for Search My VM, and it's like Google, and all he has to do is type in a query to get a list of all the virtual machines, and from there he can learn about the virtual infrastructure without calling me. So he said, I keep pointing him, just go to Search My VM. Leave me alone. So number 7 on the list comes from Nick Weaver. I talked about him a little bit earlier. He's just an independent developer. He actually works for EMC, and I don't know where he finds the time, but he's come out with 3 now of free tools. And I really liked his vSphere Mini Monitor. I created a video on my website about how to install and use vSphere Mini Monitor. It's an alerting tool, similar to vAlarm, where it pops up an alert down in the taskbar, but it has some really unique features, and even maybe a little weird. But on the left-hand side, it has alerts. So these are kind of like categories that you can get alerts on. So, for example, a session would be anytime someone logs in or logs out to vCenter. And I found that really beneficial because in a large, virtual infrastructure, or even if you just have two admins, you might want to know every time, the other admin's logging into vCenter to do something, so you're not, maybe duplicating some work. So it has these categories on the left, and then it has these channels, is what he calls it, which are basically the alerting methods. So the first one that's on by default is the notification tray, so just a little pop-up in the taskbar. Then you can also get an email message. You can send out a Twitter message every time something happens in the virtual infrastructure. I'm not sure why in the world you would want to do that, but it's really unique.
You got to show them your next screen with it, yeah.
Yeah, so it also has an RSS feed. So you see on the top here, this is where I logged into vCenter. I got a taskbar, alert message that I'd logged in. And so you would get something like that every time, someone logs into vCenter with their Windows username and password. And then here you see some tweets that happened every time I logged into vCenter. And when I logged out, I quickly went out and tried to delete the tweets. But so a really unique tool, from a guy who's just doing this part-time and on the weekend. He's got another free tool, and it's called a vSphere Wordpress Plug-in. And you don't normally hear those words all together in one sentence, like who's ever heard of a vSphere Wordpress plugin? But what it does is it shows your virtual infrastructure statistics on your WordPress blog. So WordPress is a blogging system if you're not familiar with it. And I'm not sure why you'd want to do that, but for some lab environments or something, maybe you want to promote what's going on, or maybe you have an internal WordPress blog. I think that would be cool. So another free tool from Nick. Nick also works on the EMC VSA. A VSA is a virtual storage appliance. So it's like a storage area network that runs in a virtual machine or as software. So there's a lot of VSAs out there. OpenFiler's one, which is an open source. And in fact, I created a number of my videos using OpenFiler as the storage area network because I didn't have a hardware SAN. So you can do things, like use vMotion or SVMotion or DRS or HA, using VSAs. And back to Nick here. Nick worked on the EMC VSA, and he upgraded it. He added some new features, and now he calls it the Uber VSA, and it's on his website as well. And EMC has free plugins, but those EMC plugins, these are plugins for the vSphere client. Those plugins only work with the EMC hardware. Not everybody has a big EMC SAN, but they do work with the EMC VSA. So you can download the free VSA. If you could get those, you could download those EMC plugins, and Nick said you could try out those free plugins using the free VSA.
Yeah, speaking of VSAs, if you really want to become a storage guru, there's more companies than EMC doing it. NetApp, HP with the left hand. You can download these VSAs usually for a 30-day or maybe a 60-day thing, but it gets you familiar with their storage backend. So if you're either thinking about purchasing their product or if you just want to start learning for yourself, if you want to start hacking away at their command line and see what you can do that as well. So it's a way for you to start developing your own skills.
Yeah, we don't have VSAs listed in here, but the HP left-hand VSA is a commercial product, but the EMC VSA is free, and OpenFiler is free. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So number 8 on the list comes from a website called robware.net. The tool is called RV Tools, and it's a reporting tool. And the first time I ran it, my immediate thought was it's tab heaven, because this is what it looks like. It's just got a tab for every type of resource in the virtual infrastructure. One for memory, disk, network, tools, snapshots, hosts, NICs. So it's really a reporting tool. So it's kind of like Excel, and you've got these columns across the top. You can sort and filter these columns. And it's also got a really cool export feature where basically everything you see on all those tabs, you can press one button under File up there, and you can export all that into a spreadsheet. So it's like a really cool documentation, application.
Yeah, it's really cool. The fact is you can actually connect it to either a standalone ESX server or you can do it to a complete vCenter, whole VI environment. And what it'll do is like I said, this isn't about stats. It's about reporting. So what it'll do is it'll bring in all the hardware that you have going on within your host. It'll bring all the virtual hardware within all your guests. And you can start sorting out so you can see are all my hosts configured with the same amount of RAM? or say our VMs, say we want, when you start virtualizing everything, you want to start pushing towards one vCPU. So what VMs are not down to one vCPU yet? So it's an easy way, and it has a good Excel-like feel. It's fast, speedy, and responsive. It's just, like you said, it's just an easy way to just hit everything, and you can export it to a nice Excel feature so you can give it to the guy above you and say, here you go. The one thing I do like about this, everything you see right here, it can also be done within Power GUI and vEcoShell. I keep forgetting to harp on their reporting features as well, but this, you don't have to install PowerShell or PowerCLI. This, you just install on your desktop. It's an easy click connect type install. You connect to it, bam, it's right there in front of you. So it's a really cool thing. Go check it out.
So number 9 on the list comes from VisionCore. Almost everybody's heard from VisionCore or seen VisionCore over in the Solutions Exchange, a big software company that's now called Quest. So what they have is they have vFoglight, which you have probably heard of too. Their big performance, analysis suite that costs a bunch of money. Actually, I don't know how much it costs, but anyway, what they have is they have a free version of that called QuickView. And QuickView is a performance analysis tool, so it's similar to the free edition of vMonitor. And the first time I ran it, my thought was, darn, it's pretty. It's just got all these little circles that go around as you use CPU and RAM. It's got graphs. It looks real pretty. And I used to use Quest's Spotlight tool, Spotlight on Exchange, which looks almost identical to this. And it's a good real-time monitoring tool. I did find out that vFoglight QuickView will keep 5 days of performance statistics, and then after that, if you want more, of course, you have to buy the commercial edition. It's got a real nice stoplight approach, or the little warning signs and green check marks, and so I think it's a good free tool. That, like we said earlier about vMonitor, you could put up on a big monitor, or you could just run it every morning to see what's going on in your virtual infrastructure. It also has some real nice reports that you can export in PDF format. So, this is an example of one that I ran on my lab that just shows data store utilization per ESX server. I was interested in the difference between QuickView and the other commercial editions. QuickView just supports one vCenter server, and there are some limitations as far as the number of objects that it supports. But for SMBs or if you don't have a lot of money to buy these big free, big expensive tools, I think it's a great option. VisionCore Quest also has vEcoShell, as we mentioned before, which right now isn't vSphere 4.1 compatible.
It's not 4.1. If anybody knows Scott Harold, or he goes by VM Guru on Twitter, this is his brainchild and his baby, and he said 30 more days and it'll be ready. So.
Okay. They also have vOptimizer Waste Finder, which goes out in your virtual infrastructure and looks for storage waste. They have vConverter SC, which is a P2V conversion tool. So a number of free tools from VisionCore. Number 10 on the list is a new entry, a really new entry even to the virtualization market. Comes from a company called Xangati. They're over here in the Solutions Exchange. And just recently, they announced a new free offering. And Xangati comes from the physical network infrastructure side. They create performance software for the physical network infrastructure in the past, and now they've moved into the virtualization space. But because they have this experience on the physical network analysis side, they bring in a lot of network statistics that you won't find anywhere else on any other tool. And how they do this is they use NetFlow, if you're familiar with Cisco's NetFlow. But what a lot of people don't know about is that NetFlow is enabled on the virtual network switches, or the vSwitches. So they can pull NetFlow statistics from the vSwitches, and then they can bring that together with the statistics that they pull from the vCenter API about CPU and RAM utilization, and bring it all together to give you virtual network information and virtual machine performance statistics. So there's a lot of information on Top Talkers. And what this network information gives you, if we look at the next slide here, it gives you information about the ports and the protocols in use on the virtual network, and then also the performance statistics and how much utilization those particular protocols are using. So you could find out that one virtual machine is using 50% of the virtual network, or so many bytes using HTTP, let's say surfing the web, or it could be PC over IP traffic, or you'll find out what type of traffic is actually in use in the virtual network. They also have a 14-day free trial of the commercial edition.
Yeah, I'll talk about this. I did a big write-up on my blog about this. This is a new addition to my top 10. It was a really smart move by Xangati to put this free appliance out there because they are the only ones doing what they're doing, basically. It's an end-to-end network monitoring solution. Not only will Xangati monitor all your vSwitches, virtual distributed switches, Nexus 1000 Vs, but it also does your physical switches in your environment. So it's truly an end-to-end monitoring solution. The limitations of it, though, he talked about the DVR capability. With the free version, you get two different versions. One, you can log in to the web page of it, and you can start the recording, stop the recording. Two is if you have an alert within your ESX environment, it will automatically start a recording for you, so you can actually go back and replay and see what was happening in your environment while that happened. Another thing is you're limited to what they call 10 identities. I had to ask the same question myself, well, what the hell is an identity, right? So I asked, and basically what it is, it's either an IP address or a virtual machine. So if you want to monitor all your iSCSI traffic, that's one identity right there, and you can just see all the stats for it. Two, if you want to go just to a specific VM, you can actually drill down into the VM. It pulls ESX API stats just to see sort of CPU and RAM contention, and then you can dig into the network. You can see what sort of packets it's actually sending. Drill down even further, you can see who it's talking to, what kind of packets are it sending, and how many of those packets are it sending. So some of it shows it right up there. It's a really great product. Get out there and check it out. I think they're also giving away $5,000, so that's probably another good reason to go check them out.
Yeah, and I'm sure they can't use it because it's trademarked, but it has a real TiVo-like feel. How you can rewind back in time, because I don't know how many times as a VMware administrator or network admin somebody would walk in and say, did you see that performance problem that happened an hour ago? What happened? I said, well, I don't know. Why didn't you come to me an hour ago? Well, you can rewind back in time using this tool. So. And then there were so many free tools out there. I had trouble just picking 10. So we have a list of some bonus free tools. The first one comes from Ricky Al-Qassam, who actually works for Veeam. But on his website, he's got some tools like Plug-in Wizard and the vDisk Waste Finder.
The Plug-in Wizard's, it's pretty cool and unique at the same time. Basically, everybody has probably one piece of a web page that's your management, whether it's, say, Veeam Monitor, or if it's your SAN, you access it through a web interface. What the Plug-in Wizard, what it'll do is it will actually put a new tab within vCenter of whatever you want, and it'll display that web page right there within vCenter. So, you can add, even if it's a specific website you like to go to, you can add that within your own vSphere client, so you can actually just view it inside there without having to have multiple tabs open.
Yeah, there's also the Hyper9 Search plugin that gives you kind of like a Google interface inside your vSphere client. They have Guess My OS, which is kind of an eye candy application.
It's just eye candy, basically.
Yeah.
What it'll do is you plug it into whether your ESX or vCenter server, and it will figure out if it's a Windows or a Linux VM, and it'll just put a Windows or a Linux icon on top of that green play button. The bad thing is about it, if you have any sort of problems going on within your virtual machines, you usually get that red or yellow exclamation point. It doesn't change. So cool, but really bad con. So.
Another one is VMware Go. A lot of people don't know about VMware Go. VMware Go is really for someone who's new to ESX and new to VMware virtualization. So it's really tailored towards the SMB, really those Windows admins who are a little weird about, well, what's this ESX hypervisor? So it helps you to download ESXi free edition and then actually manage it and configure it. But one of the benefits I found out about VMware Go when I created a video actually on how to use it on my website is that it's really useful for updating ESXi free edition. It makes it super easy, just a few clicks, and you can update your free ESXi servers using VMware Go. Another one is Putty, which was originally on my list back in 2008. Putty is just a SSH client, free, super simple. Every VMware admin needs an SSH client to connect to ESX or ESXi using the command line. Some other free tools, the Ultimate Deployment Appliance, or UDA. Mike Laverick, who is actually speaking here on Site Recovery Manager, he hosts the latest edition of UDA on his website, rtfm.ed.co.uk. He also has a good quick reference guide and how to get started using UDA. What it does is it allows you to roll out virtual machines en masse across your virtual infrastructure, and it does it really quick and efficiently.
Yeah.
Have you used it?
I've used it before. It's an easy way to say if you want to deploy 50 XP virtual machines, it's basically a repository for your ISOs, and it pushes them out.
Yeah, another one is SolarWinds VM Monitor and VM Console. VM Monitor is actually on the left here, and what it does is it uses SNMP to bring back some basic information about your virtual infrastructure. The con is they haven't upgraded it for vSphere 4, so it's not vSphere 4 compatible, and it also doesn't work with free ESXi. But they have a new tool that just came out that's on the right called VM Console, and it is vSphere 4 compatible, and they told me that it does work with free ESXi. I haven't tested it myself, but I did use this tool on my virtual infrastructure on the right there, and it's real basic, but it allows you to quickly power on and power off virtual machines and see the status of virtual machines and ESX servers. Some other free tools, from VMware, of course, they have Converter Standalone, which is a P2V conversion tool, but still very useful to have in your Batman tool belt. They have VMware Vima, or the VMA, the vSphere Management Assistant, which is a virtual machine you import into your virtual infrastructure, and then you use that to manage your virtual machines from the command line. So they're really pushing people with the full ESX with the console operating system going away. They're really pushing people to use Vima or Power CLI to administer their virtual infrastructure. I created a video on my website on how to use Vima to consolidate your syslogs from all your ESXi servers onto the Vima virtual appliance to get a consolidated view of those syslogs. There's also the VMware vCLI, which is a VMware command line that you install on your local PC, but I would recommend using Power CLI instead of that. So VMware has a number of public betas out there. They have the vCenter Administrator Portal, they have mobile access, and their vShield application Edge may now be out of beta, actually, with the announcements here at VMworld and into production. But always keep a lookout on the public betas. Another one is Kendrick's Advanced ISO.
I put this together. I do have a disclaimer on my website about using this. There's a lot of tools involved here that, if not used correctly and read the how-tos, you can destroy data within your virtual environment. Basically, I built this and put this out there. It's a collaboration of free tools, but it's for virtual machine performance. Basically, I put it as an ISO, so you just match this ISO to your virtual machine and start working from there. I just got to read some things I did, like P2V cleanup. When you take a physical to a virtual machine, you always have to go through and delete all the old hardware that was physical. There's some scripts involved that will actually go ahead and just take and remove all that. If you have physical HP servers and you take them virtual, there's a lot of HP crap agents that get installed on there. There's a tool that will automatically remove all the agents that are hidden, also the services, that will get rid of all the services. It'll rename local area connections. That's pretty simple. But also, when you go to start pushing your virtual environment, if you want to take it from a 4-core physical server, and we want to give it a 1 vCPU, you got to change the HAL within there so it has a little better performance. Also, partition alignment. There's a lot of great blogs out there, namely one by Aaron Delp. He's a rock star when it comes to this stuff. If your partitions are, if your virtual machines are not aligned to partitions, you can actually experience maybe a 30% performance degradation. So there's a tool in there that's called VM check alignment. So it's an easy, quick GUI interface. So you can actually see if your virtual machines are aligned. Basically, 2008 servers and Windows 7s are the only things that are going to be default aligned within your infrastructure. If it's XP 2003, it's not aligned by default. So you actually have to go through and start aligning your VMs. One tool out there, if you are a NetApp customer, they have something called MBR tools. You have to be a NetApp customer to actually get them. I asked to see if I could package it in here. They told me no, because it's a legal thing. So if you can, get a hold of that. Also, I think it was Vision Core's product that also has an alignment check, be able to do it just through the GUI. So that's a little bit easier. Also, I have a how-to on creating what's called like a golden template for the rest of your 2003 VMs that you need to push out. So basically now when you need to push out a new VM, everything's going to be automatically aligned correctly for you. Reclaiming space. Everybody knows how awesome thin provisioning is, right? There's one huge gotcha about it that a lot of people don't know about. So say you have a 50 gig VM, and they'll say, over the weekend we need to transfer 100 gigs worth of images to this VM. Okay, cool, not a problem. So we put 100 gigs worth of images on there. It's now Monday. Let's go ahead and delete that 100 gigs. Within XP or within 2003, whatever you have, you still see only 50 gigs, right? But on your back end and your SAN, you still see 150 gigs being used. And that's because you have all this white space now. I have a how-to on using and Delete is packaged in there. It's actually a product from Microsoft that you actually go through, run this, and it will start deleting white space. It's actually a great thing to run against your file servers if you virtualize those. So you can actually start reclaiming all that lost space from thin provisioning. So it's one of those things you really don't think about. Also, there's some analysis tools. There's somebody on Twitter created something called Loadstorm. So if you really want to performance test your infrastructure, it'll start pegging CPU and RAM really hard, so you can see about really what you can do. Also, I/O meters, so you can check IOPS within your infrastructure. There's also a virtual router. If you ever take the, I think it was the Fast Track course. I think it was used in there, and it's just a small. I think it's like not even a meg. It comes as a floppy image, so you can just have an easy virtual router within your infrastructure.
So what we did is we took the free tools we talked about in this presentation, and we tried to break them down into categories to help you give you some visual grouping of what these different applications are. So there's CLI administration tools like Power GUI and the Power Packs and vEcoShell. There's performance analysis tools like Xangati, vMonitor, and vFog like QuickView. There's file transfer and backup tools. There's alerting tools, virtual machine administration tools, storage, and then general log reporting and analysis tools. So, and then everyone's virtual infrastructure is different, and everyone's going to see different values out of these different tools. So I posted a survey on my website, and I hope everyone will go out there and fill it out and let me know what you think about these free tools. And then I'll be presenting the results in video format after VMworld Europe, after everyone's had a chance to try these out. I hope you'll check it out. It's a good, quick survey, just a few questions. And then just one quick plug about what I do. We have a booth here at the VMworld and Solutions Exchange, and we're selling the VMware vSphere video training course. It's also in the bookstore, so I hope you'll come by and check us out.
And there I got all these free DVDs. I think it's over at the Veeam booth. I think
yeah,
it is.
The Veeam booth and the Train Signal booth.
So you can see, hear David's voice for, 40 hours on it, something like that?
Thanks very much for coming. If you have any questions, let us know.
Thank you.